everyone, welcome. I'm Naomi Pollack, Assistant Director of Employer Relations in Marquette University's Career Services Center. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. And on behalf of the Marquette University Career Services Center, I'd like to thank you for attending our third of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. And today our session will be focused on onboarding and retaining diverse talent. So our agenda today is not super complicated. We'll just have our fireside chat with our guest presenters, who I will be introducing shortly. And then we'll have Q&A time. I have a designated Q&A at the end where I can bring forward some questions submitted during registration. So thank you for those of you who sent those forward. But there will be an interactive portion to this program as well. So feel free in the moment, if questions come up, put those in the chat, or as I leave space for questions, which I will do, feel free to unmute and chime in at that time. And then we'll wrap up after the formal Q&A portion of the program. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to go through a few tech tips. My colleague Gracie Van Spankeren will be muting all callers, so please again unmute yourself when you speak and contribute, and just say your name and where you're from. And then as things arise, if you're the type like me who questions, elude you as soon as you thought of it, they're gone, type it in the chat so that it's not gone, and then that way Gracie can bring that to the forefront, again, where we have those pauses and moments for the audience to participate. So with that said, I want to introduce our callers today and our guest speakers, sorry. So we have Kobena-Marcus Collins. He is the Diversity and Inclusion Advisor for Kohl's Corporation, where he leads a team that trains and develops organizational leaders surrounding hiring, supporting, and retaining diverse talent. Kobena brings a decade of diversity recruitment experience to today's conversation, from recruiting diverse talent for nonprofits such as City Year to government organizations such as the City of Milwaukee. Thank you, Kobena, for being here, and I'm going to leave you some space to add anything else about yourself you'd like to highlight.
Oh boy, well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And the only thing I'd like to highlight is that my earliest interaction with Naomi and our interactions was at one of the career fairs at Marquette. I think I was with the city. I had just started with the city, and I just want to say, to call with somebody as impressive as you, Naomi, is an honor. The level of relationship building and rapport that you're able to build with your partners is uncanny. And so I just wanted to, share that interaction and my sentiments to you, because as our moderator, I think it's definitely worth making sure that we recognize your greatness as well.
Well, thank you. That was so nice. I wasn't leaving room for me, but that's good. I'll take it. Excellent. Well, our second guest speaker and presenter today, we have Ranell Washington. Ranell is the co-founder and vice president of SocialX MKE, a young professional diversity and inclusion consulting group. SocialX MKE creates and provides a connective platform for diverse young professionals, businesses, and corporations to successfully thrive in Greater Milwaukee and the surrounding areas. Ranell is also Partnership Development Advisor at American Family Insurance. So thank you for being here, Ranell. And again, space for you to add anything to that introduction that I may have missed.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just really excited to be here to add some seeds and a little bit more meat to what Kobena is going to add. I'm going to follow his lead as one of our partners and trusted partners at Kohl. I just am really excited to be a part of this conversation today and provide a little bit more information about what SocialX has been doing to help during the pandemic, continue to engage with our partners and how their interns and potential new hires have the opportunity to come to Milwaukee and be successful and thrive in their career.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to dive right on in. And I will shift this first question over to you, Kobena, to get started. So the first question is in regards to inclusive onboarding. How can organizations use onboarding to ensure that new hires feel welcome to bring their whole authentic self to work and feel that they belong?
So this is a great question. And organizations obviously are going to be able to do this in, whatever way makes sense for them. I think what's important for every organization is to be authentic. So, if you have a D&I program, highlight that, absolutely, bring it up right away as a part of the onboarding. But if you are in the beginning stages of that, be authentic and be honest about that as well, because once people get into an organization and we're sold a bag of goods and they get into the organization and pull back the sheets and see, oh, this is not what I signed up for, that's a perfect recipe for attrition. And if we're trying to retain people, people will stay for a multitude of different reasons. I'm sure I'll talk about those in a little while, but the best thing that any organization can do is be authentic and allow their employees, whoever's leading the orientations, let them be authentic and share their stories. Stories are always more compelling than just data. We can read through all the paperwork on our own for the specifics, but the stories of how people are able to bring their truest authentic self to work every single day. And we think about belongingness, and is diversity, inclusion, and equity all one, and that equals belongingness. And I like to use the analogy, diversity is being invited to the party. Most people have heard of that. And a lot of people will say inclusion is being asked to dance. I would argue that inclusion is being a part of the planning committee for the party. And then belongingness is being able to dance whichever way the music makes your body move and feel comfortable doing that.
I love that analogy, and I have yet to hear that. So thank you for taking it and making it a whole heck of a lot more fun.
You got it. I'm a dancer. I might break out in salsa in a minute.
Hey, now you're talking my language. I like that. I like that. All right. So same thing, inclusive onboarding. Another question in this area: when is the best time to make new hires aware of resources like employee resource groups, mentorship programs, etc.?
Sure, great question. We do it right for orientation. When we think about retention, we think about our partnerships that we have strategically created. So, for example, Social X is exactly why I wanted to bring in one of our strongest partners, one of our earliest partners, Social X, to the table for this conversation, because we talk, even in the hiring process. Social X provides us with what's called a concierge service, where if we're recruiting somebody and they are going to be moving to Milwaukee, we connect them with Social X. And Social X gives them a tour of the city, whether virtual or in person, and kind of highlights what are the places to go in Milwaukee, kind of places where they can live, and give more of a third-party perspective so that they know, again, being authentic, being transparent about what this looks like. People will appreciate that coming in the door. And when they see something that is, maybe not ideal, it's not going to be a shock, because we already told them we've got some areas where we need to work. So we put it standardized, and right in the first day orientation, you learn about all 8 of our BRGs. You learn about our strategic partners like NAVO and Social X and things like that. So people walking in the door, especially those from underrepresented populations, they're going to know that they have resources and that this is a place where not only can they, do really good work, but they can bring their truest authentic self every day.
Yeah, Naomi, if I can add a couple points.
I was just going to open it to you, Ranell.
Yeah,
yes, please add to that.
Yeah, no. So Kobena laid it out very great. I'm a sports fanatic. He likes to dance. I like sports. So he kind of threw me the alley-oop, like CP3 to Blake Griffin back in the day when he played for the Clippers. But I think that's the best time, is like Kobena said, during the interview process. When you are working with diverse candidates and they're making a choice. If I have to move to Milwaukee from another city, the resources and, the Google searches that I do may be very limited in that information. So it's always great to have expert opinion that can provide, what's really happening in that city. Yes, you have your BRG groups who can do it, but having another resource to add to what the BRG has compiled already is really amazing. The other thing I say is, when you are providing that information during the interview process, it helps them make a much more informed decision. Nobody wants to bring on a candidate for a job and then they realize, like Kobena said, they're ready to leave because it's not what they thought. So as much information as you can get to them on the front end about the city, about that role, about the BRG, ERG, or Affinity Groups, it just makes them that much more willing to commit to that role. And I know there's some other things we're gonna talk about too, but the mentorship program piece, I think that's really critical, and having somebody that aligns within the specialty or the job that they're gonna have, so they feel that much more connected. And the more that they're ingrained and connected to the city, to their job, their role or company, the more likely that they're gonna be willing to stay with that company for a much longer period of time.
Yeah, Ranell, you bring up a good point, especially when we think about the recruitment side of things, and especially the higher level positions that when we're trying to fill those, they may be coming from an organization that they're the only one. And as a part of our pitch, even, we want to highlight, hey, we've programs or we've got BRGs, and we encourage all of our associates to be members of at least two. One that you have a personal affinity to, and one that you know the least about, so that you can learn how to be an ally for somebody else. And so those types of things help to build a concept of organizational culture that, candidates like, whether they're majority or minority, most people want to be in a space where they can learn from others.
Yep. And one other brief point about the previous question, as much within the interview process, as you're thinking about some of your new hires, your middle managers, and some of those executives, where you can have the diversity present, right? If you're recruiting a diverse person to come work for your company, they want to see other diversity. They want to know that I'm not coming to this situation like Kobena described where I'm the only one. That's not a comfortable feeling. So as much as through that interview process as you can, bring in individuals to be a part of that recruiting, the interview, the onboarding process, I think it just gives so much more comfort for me to, again, like I said, make that more informed decision that this is the company, this is the role, this is the place I need to be and start my career or continue my career.
What's funny is I throw this last thing out. And I'm glad this was a fireside chat, because otherwise this would not be a very good back and forth. But what I think is interesting that people may or may not know, especially within underrepresented communities, they're going to have their interviews with whoever is the recruiter or the hiring manager, but then they're going to go online and they're going to see who else works. Once they find somebody that looks like them aesthetically, so a Black person is going to look, hey, is there another Black person that works here? I'm going to reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, do you have a minute to talk about your experience at so-and-so organization? Those conversations are happening. So this is a great way to potentially insert some of your RBRGs have people champions. And so they're really conscious around what is, how can they benefit the people who are currently here? How can they help recruit, things like that. So maybe working that into the part of the strategy, like, hey, offer the candidates, if you're interested, we can let you talk to somebody from one of our BRGs that maybe you identify with, to get more of a insider conversation, insider look at what it's like to be Kohl's, not from a hiring manager or a recruiter. So that's just another way to leverage those resources.
Thank you so much for that back and forth dialogue. I thought it was very much appropriate. And I will say, I like that Kohl's is doing pick a group that you are affiliated with or have an affinity to, and then one that you do not know as much about. That's the first I've heard of that. And that's a really great strategy, I think, to the point of developing a culture that is inclusive and welcoming. So I'm going to pause because those were the only two pre-submitted questions I had on onboarding. So If there's anyone else who wants to talk about onboarding specifically, inclusive onboarding, feel free to unmute and ask any question you have, or Gracie, if you have anything in the chat to bring forward.
Just shout out to my guy, Wade. I see you, Wade.
And I've got
Wade is one of the...
I defined my unmute, Kobena, sorry.
You got it. Wade is one of the OGs. He's been around for a while, since I've been out I was out in the space. Wade was out. I always looked for that familiar face when I went to career fairs. I was always looking for Wade. Oh,
We bonded. We bonded.
We always look for Wade too. And then, you know, we run the other way from him every now and again, right, Wade?
Usually.
Well, if we don't have a specific one here, this is not necessarily about onboarding, but it felt like it fit in with where the two of you were just going. And so I think it would be nice to insert here. One of the general questions that was submitted during registration was, how do you attract and support a more diverse workforce if you don't already have one? And then how do you avoid tokenism when first diversifying your employee population? So I feel like those two kind of mashed well together to some of the things you just shared. So any advice there?
Yeah, sure. So attracting it is, it's not a one and done type of a thing, right? So when you're attracting, you have to have a strategy. A lot of organizations, they forget that putting investment into their marketing of their product, that's what attracts people to their product. We have to do the same thing when it comes to attracting people to work for our organizations. We have to people to the employer with our employer brand. What's it like to actually work at Kohl's or at Harley or at Direct Supply? You know, what's the culture like? What is, you know, what I like to call is the full thing. So, you know, 4 things that people are looking for is, are the people there that they are going to work with? Do they like the people? Are people friendly? Are they supportive? You know, passion. You know, does the work align with their passion? Does the organization talk about how they can progress and be promoted throughout the organization so that they know that there's not a glass ceiling for them? A lot of times, especially women, feel like there's, you know, that glass ceiling. And so from a D&I perspective, it's important to promote those things and promote people moving through the process and sharing that story of what it's like to work for that organization. And really the last thing that people are looking for in a lot of, at least what I've found, is pay is the last of the things. Even the what comes before pay is impact. You know, do they have the ability to have an impact on the organization? And so I call that the 4PI kind of strategy. When I think about recruitment and retention, I'm looking at how am I addressing those 5 different indicators of success or happiness within their roles.
Anything you'd like to add there, Ranell?
Yeah, I think a couple questions ago, Kobena said that a lot of companies just need to really be honest about the journey, right? You know, if you are trying to hypothetically recruit a Ranell or Kobena to your organization, you're not quite there yet. I think in that interview process, you have to be very transparent to say that, you know, we are seeking to be a company that is very diverse, and we like to be very inclusive, and we're very early in our journey. You could potentially be a part of that. And that's when, like Kobena said, you make that business decision to say that I am an entrepreneurial person. I'm okay coming into this organization where I can come in, I can add that value, I can roll my sleeves up, and I can be a part of this company's transition to become this very inclusive and diverse company that they are seeking to become. If that's too much of a challenge for someone, they'll let you know that right away when they won't accept your offer, because they may want to come in a situation where it's more set up and it's not quite as gray or in more of a startup type of situation for them. So depending on where that individual or individuals are in their respective career journeys, you'll know that right away. The other thing that I say and add is that even if it's not a place that is as diverse as they may like it, the individuals who are currently there are providing an inviting and belonging environment. And the topics, the things that may be very important to me, there's a leader in place where I can go to that individual and say like, hey, you know, this happened last week in this community. Can we send out an email? Can we discuss this? You know, and there's openness to be willing to have those conversations so that I feel like I belong within this organization, although I may be one of, or come into a situation where the diversity goals, numbers, metrics, et cetera, aren't quite there yet. So it's a sense of belonging and allowing conversations to happen that occur in areas that I'm really passionate about and or resonate with.
Yeah, you also talked about sometimes the reality is we don't have diversity there. So these candidates, they're going to come in this, there isn't much diversity. And that's relatively typical in corporate America right now, where you'll find that there's not a whole lot of diversity, maybe in the 30 percentage of points have that much diversity. What I've found in several different organizations, and I'm a visual person, so you have to just humor me on this one. I'm going to ask the audience to kind of get engaged, and this is an opportunity for people to throw a response in the chat. So when you think about, people in their careers, the candidates, they're the seed. And when we think about planting, if you want a flower or some vegetables, you plant these seeds, what do you need for those seeds to grow into a successful plant? Throw it in the chat or unmute yourself. If you're trying to create a garden, you have the seeds, what do you need for that to grow?
Some good soil.
Good soil. Who said that?
That was me.
That was you, Naomi?
You need to tend to them.
You need to tend to them.
I'm getting water, sun, right environment. Things are coming through in the chat.
Great, thank you. So a lot of times, Naomi, you hit the nail, what I was going to say in the head. You hit the nail on the head. Oftentimes we'll put water on those plants, and sometimes we'll put, make sure we have sun, but oftentimes we don't check to see if the soil is fertile. If the soil isn't fertile, it doesn't matter how many D&I events that you have or how many newsletters, and which is that sun and that water. You could put all that if you want to, but if the soil isn't right, if the environment isn't conducive to nurturing and giving nourishment to those people to grow, you'll never have a diverse workforce and you'll never retain your diversity. And so you have to make sure that the soil is fertile, the environment is ready for this. And so what does that mean? That means you need to have allies, you need to have managers that create environments where people can have constructive conflict. You have to have hiring managers that are looking specifically for people to have a difference of opinion with who else is on the team, because that's what's going to make this soil fertile. Because again, if you have just a rocky soil, you'll never get fruit from your tree.
I promise you, Kobena didn't plant me in the group to say that.
No pun intended, right?
All right, well, we'll roll into retention. And again, if someone needs to chime in, feel free to do so. And I'll leave space in this section for that as well. But Ranell, I'm going to start with you here. So throughout this diversity, equity, and inclusion series, we've focused our attention on equitable recruiting practices. And many of the individuals on today's call work within the world of recruiting. So why is it so important to also think about retention in our conversations about recruiting?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is, today I feel like the options for careers and how work is done is just there's no shortage there. And I think the days of working for the same company for 15, 20, 25 years is those days are over. And people want variety, they want to move up. It's a myriad of different things of why people decide to move. But, you know, when you have a all-encompassing recruiting plan in place, when you think about how I get them, you know, how do I nourish them in Kobena-'s example, how do I make sure that they, you know, thrive and become this amazing employee for my company, you also have to think about how do I keep them. So when you think about on the front end, the things that you're doing and how you nourish them helps them with those decision-making processes. If most of the time when you think about employees, if I know that my company is supporting me, you know, if I had a goal to go get my MBA and do this, if I had, you know, some issue with family, and you were flexible enough to allow me to take extra time off work despite me only having 3 days of vacation left. Like, we remember those things as employees and contributors. And the likelihood that I would leave after having that type of support, it starts to dwindle a little bit. And having that support and knowing that I have a manager, a team lead, a company that supports me in those different endeavors throughout my career journey makes me, you know, not want to look outside that much more. You know, people start to look for other opportunities when they feel like something's not going right in their career and not supported. So when you have some type of a retention plan in place, those opportunities for me to look outside the company or look for other opportunities because I didn't have that support on the front end doing those. And the last thing I'll say is being very honest about what my career trajectory looks like is extremely important. Like, nobody wants to come to a company like Kobena also described and know that there's a ceiling, right? I'm here, now I'm pigeonholed in this same role for this amount of time. Like, on the front end, we should start to talk about what advancement looks like, what promotion looks like, you know, what other opportunities for me to go to a different department to begin to continue my journey on learning and being part of some initiative within the company. So there's always a thirst. The great employees are always going to have a thirst for what's next. And having those conversations early is just extremely critical.
Kobena, anything else to add there?
Yeah, I mean, so for a short, and now I do consulting, but for a short stint, I ran my own staffing agency. And doing the research would say that in order to backfill a role, you're going to spend, or it's going to cost an organization between 100 and 300% of that person's salary, between the amount of time and time it's going to take to do all the interviews, the amount of effort it's going to take for scheduling those, but then also the amount of time and effort for the onboarding and training and getting that person up on all the things that the previous person that is, you're going to spend between 50 and 300% of that person's salary to backfill a role. The higher the level, the more percentage of that salary, which means you're going to spend, you know, maybe 300% of a $300,000 job. So you're going to spend almost $1 million, you know, trying to get back to where you were. And so it's incredibly important to retain our staff, not just because there's, you know, work that's not going to get done, but it's going to be significant cost to the organization in multiple different ways. And it's kind of like that old car that little things keep on nickel and diming, and all the nickels and dimes of the work that goes into filling and getting that person back up to speed ends up being a lot of money. So that's why it's incredibly important for organizations to focus on retention. And, you know, to Ranell's point, so there's a quote that I always remember, and I remember the concept more than the quote. It's, you know, people may not always remember what you say to them. They may not remember what you do to them, but what they most certainly will do is remember how you make them feel. And so when we think about retention, It's about sure that they feel valued, that because this is human, right? It's resources, and many organizations, they want to kind of get away from the human aspect because, there's opportunities for, and favoritism and inequality and those things. But we have to understand that this is a human condition, right? And this is we have to put the human back into it and really focus on making sure that people feel what they need. I mean, oftentimes, I'm curious how many people have been in this situation where you've had a problem and you went to somebody to talk about it, and maybe in this moment you weren't ready and didn't want them to help you fix the problem. You just wanted an ear. And by them trying to help solve that problem, they made it worse. Like, now I really don't want to be with this because they don't listen to me. All they wanted was an ear. They can fix it themselves. Because sometimes people get caught up in the process and forget about the human side, that's an even bigger indication that we're forgetting about the humanistic part of, employment and of retention, and that actually drives people further away. So I always, previous supervisor taught me this. I heard him say it to somebody else, and I said, that's a good one. When somebody brings a problem, we always ask, great, so do you want me to listen or do you want feedback? Because if I want feedback and you don't give it to me, I'm also going to feel like you weren't listening, right? So it's important to be transparent, be upfront, be authentic, and say, hey, what do you want from this conversation? Because I want to make sure I'm here for you in the way that you need. So.
Excellent. Good points. Yes. I'm going to skip the next question because we inadvertently answered it, and move on to the next, which is, what tips do you have for retaining diverse talent, particularly in campus recruiting spaces where there's usually a long period between the time that a student would receive an offer and the date that they start?
I remember when I was at City Year and working. So for those of you who don't know what City Year is, they are a national nonprofit in about 30 different cities around the United States. And they recruit throughout the year for the following year. So they're recruiting 17 to 24-year-olds, so that college age student. But everybody starts in the fall, right before students start to go back to school. And so we had deadlines that's as early as September, like first week of September. So you have to keep these people, these incredibly valuable, talented individuals that have multiple options. And we didn't pay more than, peanuts, really. It was a volunteer work. So we really had to dive into their passion as opposed to their paper. And so what we used to do is, again, inject that creativity, inject that humanity into it. So we would do newsletters, we would do phone-a-thons just a couple of the year, just to say, hey, no need for anything, just to call and check and make sure they're okay, everything's good. And then from an organizational standpoint, our corporations, it's an opportunity to invite them to some of our BRG events. So if we have, say that we are partnering with Social X. So for example, Social X and Kohl's is doing a Zumba class coming up this summer. We can invite some of those people who have offer letters or who have already accepted to start when they graduate. They can engage and be a part of our programming with Social X, right? And so that gives them a way to get really excited about being in that space. So now they're actually seeing themselves with the organization as opposed to what could be. They're actually getting an opportunity to sneak peek what it's like to be working with those people specifically.
Ranell, I'm really curious to hear your insights on this one, and then maybe even just sprinkle in some of how you see young professionals coming through maybe Social X on that front end experience too.
Yeah, So the campus recruiting space is one that's really intriguing and interesting because, you know, you're a young 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old person, and you have, like Kwame said, so many options. You know, your friends are making impressions on you, and, you know, everybody's talking about their offer they got, and I'm going to this company, I'm doing this, I'm moving to this city. So you're always constant, and you got social media, and you got all these different things that are going through your mind. So you may have committed, but you're still like, oh, did I make the right decision? And I think the beauty of what Kobena started to describe is that earlier on, we talked about mentorship and connecting to the ERGs, BRGs, and affinity groups, and you have to have touch points. And I kind of wrote down and scribbled, it's like a high school person being recruited to go play Division I basketball. It's competitive, right? Everybody wants your talent. They want your ability, especially if you're a good person. And I could rescind my offer and go somewhere else if, you know, Duke or Kentucky, if you like those two schools, made a better offer. So a lot of the conversations that we have been having on the front end is like, first and foremost, did I really make the best offer to this candidate that I really could have, right? So as recruiters, it's like, did we battle back and forth about the starting salary? And were they really happy, right? Did they ask for a signing bonus? And I was like, no, it's not in the budget, because, you know what I'm saying? Like all those little things where we had to fight nail and tooth for that really didn't make sense. Those were things that I remember as an early campus candidate. And if I had to fight to get those, that makes me think that going forward within my career, if I ask for a promotion, am I going to have to fight for this? So first and foremost, you have to make sure that you're putting the best offer possible out there for that candidate or those candidates, and that you're being flexible to do so, because otherwise it's going to leave a bad taste in my mouth. And the first time out that something better comes along, I'm going to take it. So I'll start there. The other thing is those touch points in between, like Kobena described, where I'd be assigned a mentor. So if I'm coming to a company to be an HR specialist, you know, can I connect to other HR specialists so I can get a feel for what my work's going to be? I have those opportunities to start to ask questions. You know, I feel like I'm a part of the company, obviously within reason. And if you use NDAs and all the stuff like that, obviously they need to sign those. But, you know, what things can I do on the front end to make sure that I feel like I'm a part of this team already? Because that's what it is. It is a team. I'm coming in as a contributor, but as I'm getting ready to start to contribute, what things can I start to read and pick up on so I feel like I can hit the ground running and want to have that hunger to continue to be a part of this team. So, you know, those are the couple of things that I say. You know, if you are doing your recruiting cycle about 9 months in advance, you have to make sure that you're touching base with them at least once a quarter bare minimum, because, you know, if I get that offer in September and accept it, and I don't start until, you know, the following May, June, there's 2 other times where people can come on campus and, you know, something quote unquote better may come along. So you just have to have those touch points. You know, you have to incentivize that person to want to, you know, continue to want to take that offer and come. And if they're relocating, you know, that relocation package has to be a big part of it too, because, you know, if somehow within my great city, another company came along, I don't have to move anymore. I don't have to, you know, come find a place. I don't have to go through all of these different things to uproot myself and move to a new city. You know, it makes it much more simpler if I know that, you know, I'm gonna be taken care of. I'm starting to build a network. If I am moving to a new city, I'm plugging in. You know, there's some special interest groups, if, like I said, in HR, and I am an African-American or Black person, that there's in AAA HR here where I can start to meet people and just plug in. So it's a holistic approach to how early campus recruiting is done, and even going up the ladder to some of your middle management people, where, you know, as much as I can be informed on the front end and know, you know, what I'm getting myself into, and there's touch points along the way so I don't, you know, backpedal on the offer that I was offered.
Thank you. Those were some great examples. So last question that I have queued up for this section, and then I'm going to leave some space for contributions here. So we've talked about largely recruiting professionals being on today's call, what are some bite-sized, like small action steps that an individual themselves, not their organization, but them themselves can take to support colleagues, especially those new colleagues who might be part of a marginalized or underrepresented group, to feel comfortable at their organization?
Hey, you want to take this one first, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I can start. So one of the things that we've been doing at AmFam, because that's where my day job is we've been doing these Thursday touch bases within our division, and we actually had a conversation about how do we get to know each other and continue this sense of belonging and allow authenticity in all things that we do. So the first two words that come to mind are empathy and intentionality. And of course, we've been talking about everything that happened in 2020 with, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Ahmaud Arbery. I'm sure as a group in the collective, we are tired of using those examples, but I'm gonna use it right now because I feel like those were very, very, very unfortunate instances, but they springboarded a lot of individuals who really wanted to be intentional about DEI efforts and all that stuff like that. If you're in a situation where you may not be as aware or privy to some of these different issues that happen in hypothetically African-American communities, then you have to first practice empathy to see how your other African-American employees and Black employees are feeling. I know that was one of the things that there was outreach from my team lead, who is a Latino woman. She asked me, she said, how are you feeling about this? And those touch points mean the world. I had conversations with my other friends who were teachers. They worked in finance and banking where I'm from, and that wasn't being done. So as, a Black man, African-American man, that makes me feel like, well, you don't give, excuse my language, two shits about me at all and what's happening in my community. So, there has to be a level of empathy and intentionality. So one thing real quick, I say that we did schedule one-on-one. So people would, reach out, very intentionally to, schedule time with me. It wasn't a blanketed thing where, we were on a Zoom call and it was just like, how is everybody doing today? And obviously it's gonna be this weird, awkward silence and nobody's really gonna talk because nobody really wants to, because you either are spent, tired of talking about, but knowing where it's coming from a place of empathy, I'd be more willing to have a conversation with you because I know it's coming from a place where you genuinely want to know and care. And I would just say, like, step outside of your comfort zone. And last thing I did drive down here is that, sometimes we have to look outside the lens that we're used to, and we're used to our box, and we get comfortable in our situations. And when, certain things happen, the Asian hate and it's Pride Month and, and the initiatives and all of the things that I'm doing at my respective company and how I'm recruiting, is this something that allows for diversity to be a part of it? And if it's not, then we have to take a step back and look at how our practices and initiatives are being done to see, like, what can we do to help champion, different type of perspectives, like Kobena alluded to earlier in the conversation, and allow new types of thought process to come into the different things that we're doing.
Yeah, Ranell, you hit the, yeah, I mean, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so it's incredibly important. That's what every person on this call can do. Every person that you talk to, they can do, is just people, like, get to know them as people, learn about what's similar to you and learn about what's different from you. Deeper into that and ask questions. People, in most cases, people like talking about themselves and about their experience and their culture. So if you ask, they will tell. When I started at Kohl's, I had the opportunity to connect with a young a lady who is Indian and not Native American, but from India, and her husband. And I got to learn about their culture and, different religious like holidays and things that they have, and really dive deeper. And that creates an opportunity for me to learn, and now I know more of what I don't know. Like, so when we our allyship and when we talk about our BRGs and making sure that we join two, one that you are personally affiliated with and one that you know little about. The point of that is because you don't know what you don't know yet. To Ranell's point, like, your perspective is just your perspective, right? And there's all these other different vantage points of looking at the same thing. And so by joining these other different groups, this is a small step. You don't have to, jump in and try and take over, or jump in and be the chair. Just join and go at your own pace. But that's a very small thing that will have a very large impact on how you interact with your teammates and your colleagues, especially new ones, because again, if somebody comes in, I'll know that there's a difference between Arab and Indian, and one may practice Hinduism, and the other one may be Muslim, and those are two very different religions and have different holidays. But a lot of times, before I knew better, I lumped them together in a kind of that middle of the world religion type of thing. And by educating ourselves, and I shared an article on allyship, and there's 7 different ways of being an ally. I shared this article frequently within Kohl's, so that we can create a common language. And one of my favorite ones is the 5th one, and it's the scholar ally. It takes very little effort on my part, and it really is little part on anybody's part. It's almost the most lowest hanging fruit, because all I have to do is listen and learn from other people. And that's it. And from there, to Ranell's point, I have to be more empathetic, because I'll know what that looks like for them, right? There's, the difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule. The golden rule says, treat others as you would have them treat you. But what if I don't want you to give me a massage? Maybe if I want you to rub my feet, give me a shoulder massage is going to make me feel comfortable, right? Or maybe I don't like my feet rubbed and you're going to tickle me, and that's going to make me feel uncomfortable, but you like your feet rubbed. The platinum rule says treat others as the way they would have you do unto them. And so I have to learn what Naomi likes so that I can, give her the resources and support that she wants, not what I think she should want, because me.
Yeah, the other point I add is, when you think about, the question says new colleagues, right? If I'm new to a company and I see that there's not a statement released, there's not an internal conversation, there's not like a Zoom meeting that's been held to address this as a company, again, that makes me feel like that you don't care about my perspective or the things that happen on my community. And you think about when we're in school, you think about, oh, there's a new kid in the classroom. And you think about the times you may or may not have went over and introduced yourself and, tried to build a rapport. And like we talked about earlier, as the new person, if I feel like these types of situations aren't addressed, there's not a care, there's no conversation about it whatsoever, I'm more likely to leave this company and go to a company that will address these types of things. So attrition is real in this space. And, all companies aren't doing corporate social responsibility at the moment, but those who are, and those who have the DEI efforts and initiatives and whatever you're calling them right now, these are things that need to be added, and it's extremely important. You may not have to do a press release for everything that happens, but at least internally you're having these conversations. That's a water cooler talk or whatever you want to call it, but there's something to address what has happened at some level at some point, to not just appease your employees, but I think as companies, the more that you understand that I understand what's happening in the communities where I do business, from a bottom line standpoint, it makes you that much more able to secure those dollars, secure partnerships in those communities, and it just bodes well all through and through. And when companies see, like for example, Calm came to the standpoint for Naomi Osaka because she stepped down from one of the most major tournaments because of, she said she was, feeling depression. Everybody who supported Naomi Osaka, Black, brown, whatever, woman, felt like they wanted to do more business with Calm, and they were able to, see that it was a very genuine gesture. They put money on the line. They probably could have took flack from existing customers, but they felt like at that moment that was the right thing to do. At some point, you just have to say like, hey, I'm going to do what's right by my employees, by my prospective employees, so that, there's this level of inclusion. And again, you may not be quite there yet, but it's about taking those small steps, like Kwabena said, also, and planting seeds.
Thank you both so much. I'm going to open the floor now to any other questions regarding retention that maybe we didn't cover. We covered a great deal of my parking lot questions. So don't expect me to find them for you guys. Come on, what questions do we got?
We did get one come in the chat that I wanted to ask. So we know it's important to partner with diverse employees as part of the recruiting process. What is the best way to approach those employees and ask for their help with events without making them feel targeted or obligated?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And to take that a little bit further, how do you do making them feel tokenized, right? Well, because again, the key to all of this is authenticity. Now, if you're not authentic, people are going to see through it and they're going to walk right back out. So we don't want to waste anybody's efforts. I think, so the way we do this type of work at Kohl in particular is we reach out to our business resource groups, and we give people the opportunity to engage in these ways. And that way they don't feel compelled to do it, but they have an opportunity. In many cases, people who are passionate about this will gladly step forward and say, yeah, I'd love to go help do some recruitment. I'd love to go to a career fair. The important part with make sure that the communication with their supervisors and with the rest of the management allows them to do that without being penalized in any way, whether it be having to use a vacation day or, being chastised in any way for, the work that they would have had to do that day. It's different for hourly employees and those who are salaried. So, well, that's also one of those things that has to be, I'll say Kohl's, we haven't even mastered that yet. There's still those conversations. We have to take it case by case. But that's one way that we engage our associates, is by just putting it out there. And then fortunately, our BRGs are advanced at this point that we actually have a committee of the people committee who that's part of what they do with that extra work. To add on some of that, and I don't know, I don't think this is proprietary, using those committees within BRGs as opportunities for leadership development. And especially for our high potential associates, it's a great opportunity for individual contributors who normally wouldn't be able to lead to get some leadership experience, because oftentimes they want to progress to the next role, which is a leadership role, but they need leadership experience to get a leadership role, which means how else are they going to do it if they don't have a leadership role anywhere else? So again, it's about leveraging and having the overall perspective of what we're trying to do as an organization, and then being able to integrate that in the day-to-day actions that we have in different parts of the business.
Ranell, anything to add there?
Yeah, briefly, the only other thing I would just add is if you do have Affinity Groups, BRGs, and there's a clear understanding that the company has these goals of being X% racially, ethnically diverse, or having this much this many women and having this percentage of individuals in this diversity metric, explaining that very early to your BRGs, I think there will be a willingness for them to want to go an extra step to ensure that those types of goals are being hit. The other thing is a lot of information can come from your BRGs, but sometimes it can get overwhelming depending on what you're asking them to do. So if there's some way to incentivize, the BRG for wanting to be a part of it, I think that's something that can also be a conversation. And again, if you haven't gotten to a point where you have a BRG or affinity group, it's finding individuals who have something in common, right? So, if the candidate that you're looking for was a former athlete, finding the athlete within your company who may resonate with this individual. So it's finding alternative ways. It's not like, oh, we got this Black candidate, we got to go find a Black person to go and be there. No, you don't have to do that. But what other things do you know about this candidate from the resume that you can find an individual that can have some type of opportunity to relate to them, so that they're willing to have a conversation, so you can get them to consider your company and the offer that you're extending to them.
Excellent. What else? What else do we got? We have 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Was there anything else, Gracie, on your end?
No questions, just a comment about somebody who was able to integrate one-on-ones to inform new intern hires about BRGs and hopefully build that personal relationship with their onboarding new talent in a situation where they could otherwise feel potentially disconnected from their new role.
Thank you. All right. Any last minute words of wisdom, or we'll wrap up here?
I'd say my last word of wisdom is authenticity, and I'll just leave it right there.
Thank you. What about you, Ranell? Any last minute wisdom to impart?
Change. If we've been doing things the same way and getting the same results, we have to be willing to change. So I feel like coming out of 2020, coming into 2021 was just that. Obviously we're all on a Zoom call, which is relatively new for this part of our journey. Obviously we've been doing it for about 15 plus months, but being able to adapt. So change is my word.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being our experts, speaking on the topic of onboarding and retention. Claps all around. That's the thing that's not great about Zoom, is you can't really celebrate the way you can in person, but thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Thank you to our guests for attending, our employer guests. We hope that you enjoyed our series. We do plan on having a wrap-up session prior to the fall semester beginning. I will send out an evaluation today for today's program, and then for opt-in and questions for our wrap-up session. So thanks to everybody. Have a great rest of your day.